Welcome to the Disrupt Your Career podcast, brought to you by Claire Harbour
and Antoine Tirard. We're passionate about helping everyone find fulfillment in their work life.
We believe that big, messy, uncharted career changes are inevitable, and it's up to you to decide.
Will you take control and disrupt, or allow yourself to be disrupted?
We wrote the book about it, and now we share here our conversations with other thinkers in this crucial area.
Settle down and get ready to listen to this dose of wisdom.
So I'm delighted to have back on the podcast Sven Sommerlatte, who has recently written and gone through all the suffering and joys included in creating a book called Successful Career Strategy. We've got him on today simply to answer a few questions and to share the insights that have come to him both through his long career in HR and also in the process of writing this book and crystallizing all his wisdom. So welcome, Sven. It's lovely to have you back.
Thank you very much, Claire. Many thanks for the invitation.
All right. So the first question we have is quite simply, what inspired you to write the book? Did you have a specific audience or group of people in mind when you were writing it?
Well, I think many of the ideas initially came from my own experience, but then I shared it with hundreds of people as HR practitioner, and came a moment when I had time. It was between two jobs. And I remember that moment when I decided, why not start it now this morning at the breakfast table to write it down? And then it was a flow, 3 months of that writing experience, great experience, much harder after the editing and the publishing. But that's how it actually came together.
Fantastic. And if you were to share with us the key concepts and methods or tools that you discussed in your book, could you summarize them somehow for us? Obviously, we want people to buy the book as well, but the summary tends to make these things more attractive again.
A couple of the key principles are very basic. And the most basic one, but the starting point is, it is worthwhile investing a little bit of time to think about your professional development. It sounds super basic, and you would think, yes, of course, this is an important part of our life. Everyone is spending time to think strategically about it. It can't be any different. And the reality is, this is not the case. This is not the case. So many people stumble from one opportunity to the other, and for some reason don't take that time to think about it. They spend hours to define the company strategy or the product strategy that they are in charge of, and not even 1 minute very often. So I think that's the first point. It is important to think ahead. That's just as important and even more for yourself as it is, for any business you support. And I think the second principle is we need to drive this thing. I mean, if a CEO would say, well, I wait for opportunities to come along for my company, I just watch out, then you would say, well, you aren't doing a great job. And I think we are the CEO of our career enterprise and we have that responsibility to drive things, to be active. Yes, opportunities do come along, but we need to select between those opportunities. But it is also important to give an impulse and to give direction. And the third key principle, it is important that our professional life is connected to our deep desire, to what we truly aspire to, because this is how you can get true satisfaction and fulfillment. But that is very often not what people do. I was in that same situation. You are a bit influenced by your social environment, by the studies you maybe have done because that is what your parents had recommended. And then you are in a pathway that is maybe not truly yours. And I must say, as head of HR, I see so many people who at a late stage of their career, after 10, 20 years, come to the conclusion, I can't continue. This is simply not something that is giving me that satisfaction. And so I believe that as third principle, make sure, if possible early on, that you understand what is that deeper desire and to be able to connect your professional development to it.
That's so true. One of the things that strikes me a great deal in the work that I do and that we do together with Antoine is the fact that so many people haven't even connected into the idea that a career can be enjoyable and fulfilling. They see this deep dichotomy between that thing we do called work, which is basically unpleasant, and that thing we do called life, which is possibly pleasant. And this myth of work-life balance is so toxic in so many ways.
I agree, Claire. And the other day on a campus, someone came to see me and said, I don't agree with what you're writing in your book. Okay, one more. The reason was, in this case, when you know it is just not true that you get satisfaction in your professional life. I mean, I am here to make money and I'm clear about it. I get fulfillment outside of work, which I totally understand. I mean, the group of people who do at work what they are most passionate about, the artists, maybe some architects, some writers, is limited. Of course, yes, people come to work to earn some money, but within that professional activity of earning money, you can still make very significant choices and find the area that matches best your needs and your desire. So I think it is still totally relevant, even if you would have that perspective of, I'm just here to make money or to make it.
Absolutely. And I love the fact that you have dissenters and disagreeers. One of the principles that I love to live by is that being plain vanilla is not fun and not useful.
No, exactly. And interestingly, there are quite a few. I mean, another interesting disagreement came my way the other day where someone said, your concept of planning strategically is completely outdated. I mean, you need to understand people today are super agile and we just go by the opportunities, which is a misunderstanding, I believe, of what planning is in general. Eisenhower said, plans are nothing, planning is everything. And I think what he wanted to say is, it is not because we have set a target that this is carved in stone. Reviewing it all the time, of course, is the agility we have to have. But it is still useful to think ahead. It is still useful to understand what would be the dream job that I aspire to and what would be the right steps to collect the necessary experience that I need in order to one day be ready for that job, even if when an opportunity comes along, I review my plan in light of that opportunity and so on and so forth. This agility is totally, of course, necessary. But I would say that it is still highly relevant to spend a bit of time to strategically think about the career.
Definitely. So let's think more concretely. Can you share some sort of real life success stories or case studies that you've described in your book that illustrate the effectiveness of this strategic thinking that you advocate?
I can do a little bit of advertisement because I have just published on my blog, Sven Sommerlatte in oneword.com, career stories, as a matter of fact. It's probably 10 or 15, and I will continue to. I'll be on vacation next week. I'm sure I'll write a few more of these stories because it is fun to do that. It is, I think, fun to write and hopefully interesting to read. Case studies, I mean, the example of people, and usually these are more or less real life examples. Of course, I anonymize them, but there are so many stories, and some of the stories are, we spoke about vineyards a little bit earlier before we started the podcast. And this is, as a matter of fact, a friend of mine, long time ago. He was a super successful engineer, went into finance in France, made some great career start, a bit the shining star. And one day he hit the wall and he didn't get the job that he was expecting. And then everything broke down. The car, the house broke down. And why did it break down so easily? Because it was built on sand. I mean, this entire thing he had done to please his parents. They had sent him to HEC, this business school in France. They had sacrificed financially speaking. So he was just a super bright guy and very mathematically oriented. And he had that great easy start in finance. But then just one stumbling stone was enough and the cart broke. That's when I interacted with him also more intensely. And when he understood that in reality, really what he wanted was to look after the farm, the vineyards from his family. That was the only thing that he really aspired to. All the rest he did for extrinsically motivated reasons. And there is a happy end because, he had the discussions with his family that he never had before to say, look, and everyone was super happy to bring him on board. And now he is running the chateau. That was for me so eye-opening, to think how interesting. He was running in a direction that was not connected. So that is just one story, Claire. But I have now lots of these stories.
Beautiful. Being aligned with your values. People often talk about working in a career with your passion. I actually tend to believe that that's a bit of an easy and overextended argument, but working aligned with your values, that's where it comes into things. And this guy finally figured that out after all those years of performing for others. And no doubt what he had done brought him value in what he ended up doing.
Absolutely.
Now, tell us, you've become this multimedia guy. You've got your YouTube channel, you've got your blog, now you've written a book. How does your whole media strategy come together alongside doing your day job, which is not an inconsequential one?
It is absolutely true that it is time consuming, writing and filming and so on. But in this case, I must say that is a bit my hobby. So I have great joy doing it. So I know exactly, when I will be on vacation, my partner usually sleeps longer. I get up in the morning and then I get myself a cup of tea and I spend an hour or so. And then I'm very happy and satisfied by it. So I think the driver is that it is something that I personally find very pleasant. And I see it partly as the kind of satisfaction you get from some artistic work. Writing has something, even if it is not a novel, but still, you have the pleasure of putting the words together nicely. So that is the main driver. But yes, you need to find a lot of time for it.
No, it's creativity in the end, creation and creativity, regardless of the subject.
It is, absolutely. And then, of course, related to creativity, you have the feedback that others, the fact that we discuss now and so on, that is also, I think, a big source of satisfaction in a way, the reaction that you have from others.
Fantastic. Well, I'm going to call an end to this short discussion today with great thanks to you for sharing and for bringing some extra insight and wisdom to what you've already contributed to our podcast. So thank you very much for joining us, Sven.
My pleasure, Claire. See you soon.
We hope you enjoyed hearing from this month's guest as much as we did.
Do go and check out our work on disrupt-your-career.com and come back soon. Thank you.